When Star Wars is at its best, it reminds us of who we are, where we've been, where we go, and everything in between. And I think that's why Andor is such a successful TV show. And the reason I want to spend some time talking about this latest arc is because I think this is the scariest and most upsetting of the human experience. This is war, this is death, this is genocide, this is the darkest moments of human existence that I think are so fundamentally important. And the reason this show is resonating with audience and the reason it's having such a critical appraisal, the reason people love it is because of what it's exploring with their world, the Star Wars universe, and our world, how it is able to take our history and Star Wars history and kind of blend them together. I find it such a fascinating experience. And I wanted to talk about 10 key moments between episode 7, 8, and 9 that I think really just emphasize this. And I want to start with this as chronological as I can. And that should start with the episode 7, which is essentially the lead up to the Ghorman Massacre. And I should just say, spoilers ahead, you've been warned. And the Ghorman Massacre is kind of the inciting incident of this entire series. It feels like this was being led to this moment. And everything happens for this event and basically what kickstarts the Rebel Alliance from there. And there is so much lead up to it. And I think we see that in the propaganda, which is the first point that I really want to explore. There's this quote given by one of the newscasters who's broadcasting to everybody, which is, and it's the specific quote: controlled and inexplicable Ghorman resistance to imperial norm. This idea of what a norm is, this idea of us versus them, othering them, making them subhuman. That is propaganda. That is the language of genocide we are seeing. And that is something that is so fundamentally important to this show. And every character falls victim to this, whether you are consuming it and don't believe it, whether you know it's a lie, whether you believe it full-heartedly, like Cyril's mom seemingly does when her son becomes a martyr. And again, this is kind of key to understanding this show. Like, everyone's kind of being lied to, and that's a huge thing. And the scary thing is, the news is lying to us. And I think that's a huge reason this show resonates. It's because this is connecting it to the now, this idea of fake news, this idea of propaganda running amok, and how it's so hard to differentiate it. And especially when it is controlled by the state, when it is controlled by the government, and in this case, the empire. That also brings me to this other idea that I think is key, and it's a fundamental human aspect, which is the idea of destiny. It's the idea of choice, and it's the idea of, are you being forced or coerced into it? There is this quote given by a Force healer to Andor, and she says to him, he has some place he needs to be. I think that's a huge fundamental understanding of the character of Cassian Andor, which is he is somebody that has some place he needs to be, and this whole show is leading us to that moment, literally in what it's doing to where we know he'll be in Rogue One, but also this is just the character that by destiny, by faith, by just sheer will, just by sheer stupidity and bad luck, always finds himself at the middle of these inciting incidents. In this episode, it is the Ghorman Massacre, and then having to save Mon Mothma. And I think the reason Cassian Andor works so well as a vessel for this TV show is specifically he is somebody that's wrestling with this. He wants to believe he has a choice. Others would say he has a destiny to be a leader. Some go so far as to leave him to be so that he can become the leader they believe he will be. And then others would say he's forced into it. Like Luthen just kind of puts him in this. Luthen kind of knows if he can move Cassian right here, then this will probably happen. And it's this thing of, is he the puppet master? And I think that's something that Cassian himself is wrestling with in this season. He wants to believe he has a choice. We all want to believe we have a choice. In high volatile situations like war, that choice is quickly eradicated, and we can quickly become the puppet to a puppet master. And that is the scary thing. And I think that's something that Cassian is wrestling with in this show. And speaking of wrestling, there is so much of it in episodes 7 through 9, because we now need to talk about the Cyril arc of this, which is the crisis of faith this character is receiving. He is a typical bureaucrat. He is this imperial bureaucrat who seems pretty mild-mannered. He's somebody that seems to be very by the book. He seems to just be this guy that just works in this system and wants to do good at his job. I think that's the scariest thing about his character is, in theory, we all want to be this type of person. We all want to be good at our jobs. We all want to climb up. We all want to feel fulfilled. All of this. And the thing is Cyril is the villain of this show. And in many ways, he's the monster, but he's an unforced monster. I don't think he looks himself as a monster, and I don't necessarily even know if the audience should look at him like a monster. He is an extremely flawed human being, and he is a very stupid human being, I think is also a fair word to say, and he does atrocities. Whether we can label him a monster, it doesn't really matter because his role in history is defined and we know who he is and we know who he served. And just by that, we know what side of history, we know what his legacy will be. But he as himself doesn't seem to be in full-heartedly with the Empire as he begins to learn the atrocities that they are committing. This is a huge episode arc within episode 7 and 8 where he basically starts to feel this crisis of faith, and he has this encounter with one of the Ghorman resistance leaders in Enza, and he basically tries to warn her like what is going to happen, and it leads to her slapping him across the face. It is this whole idea of he doesn't want to believe blood is on his hands. He doesn't want to be a part of this massacre. He doesn't know this massacre is taking place. And yet, as Dedra reminds him in episode 8, she gives this specific quote, "You didn't seem to mind the promotions. They are doing this no matter what." That is kind of the justification that Dedra does to herself, where it's just like, listen, they're going to do it one way or another. I might as well benefit from this, and I might as well have control, and I might as well have a say in how this all goes down if it's going to happen either way. And I think that's the thing that's kind of scares Cyril, is he's so blind to it. He is so ambitious in his pursuit within the Empire that he doesn't actually take a moment to question what the Empire is doing, what this could possibly mean, because it's so obvious what he's doing. It's so clear, and yet he's just not asking that question. So when he gets to this moment of a crisis in faith, it's just too little, too late. And I think that's, again, just something that we see. That is the humanity of a character. This is what Cyril does so well as a character, and what the actor portraying Cyril does so well is there is a humanity to this character. He gets lost in his own ambition, and when he finally meets his downfall due to it, he has no one left to blame but himself, which is, again, true to real life. And now that we've kind of skirted around this, let's kind of talk about the inciting incident, which is the Ghorman Massacre, or as they pointedly say, the genocide of the Ghorman people. Specifically, there is a quote, and I'm pulling a bunch of quotes, but it is the quote, "Open fire." That is what begins the massacre of the Ghorman people. This is one of the most frightening scenes I've ever seen in Star Wars. This is probably the best episode of Star Wars that I've ever seen on TV. And this isn't even probably, this is the best episode of Star Wars TV. This is probably the best thing of Star Wars we've gotten since Empire Strikes Back. That is not hyperbole. I believe that to be true. It is an incredible sequence and an incredible episode of basically what happens, what genocide looks like, what the destruction of human life looks like in the pursuit of natural resources. There is so many moments that are so upsetting. And obviously the inciting incident is this Imperial sniper who doesn't shoot at the crowd. He shoots at the police officers, these inexperienced police officers, who then open fire on the crowd. And then it's so much just chaos from there. The direction, the writing of this episode are phenomenal. One of my favorite moments is that we just have the TIE fighters flying above, and the sound design of it. It just adds this scary feeling throughout. It's such a well-directed episode, and everything feels so real. This is a episode that really feels like Star Wars. Like when the stormtroopers walk in, it is terrifying. It just feels like these people are being closed in on, because that's what is happening. One of the best sequences in this episode is the KX series security droids. They are terrifying in this moment. When they come out and they just start wreaking havoc on the plaza, it is truly one of the most frightening, one of the most upsetting moments of Star Wars history. And again, I think what works so well about this is how true this is to our history, how often we see this in our human history, and thus all these beats feel familiar. All these plans, these conspiracies, the decision to basically fake a disruption to then start a riot, like that is something that we've seen throughout the history of humanity. And like, I think that's what this show does so well in it, where it's, again, it feels like our history. This feels like something that can happen, because it does happen. We see it happen all the time. And it's just such a wonderfully directed scene, juxtaposed to what happens moments before the insurrection, which is the peaceful protest. And again, that is very key to it. The Ghorman people are peaceful in their protest. It reminded me a lot of the musical Les Mis, which is these people resisting the grips of their oppressor. And then, of course, we know what the oppressor then does when pushed in this way. And it's the song of the Ghorman people, which then leads to the slaughter of the Ghorman people in what is truly one of the most upsetting things I've ever seen in the history of Star Wars. And it's the inciting incident that just defines this series, defines this show, and really just brings life to what the Rebel Alliance is fighting against. The show does such a great job of painting the Empire for who they are. No ifs, no buts, no this is cool, none of that. They are truly evil and despicable in their actions, which then let's kind of cut back to what happens next, which is my favorite moment of episode 8, which is the resolution of the Cyril arc, which is basically as Cyril is having this moment of realization, his come to Jesus moment, as he's standing in the middle of the plaza, basically realizing he has been lied to, he has nothing, and the people of Ghorman are being killed, and something that he helped incite. Even if he doesn't want that blood on his hands, the blood is on his hands. Here's the brilliance of Andor's writing. He doesn't go out of his way to help people. He's in shell shock. He seems terrified, but again, in these moments, he isn't going out of his way to help the Ghorman people, even through his own seemingly disgust in what is happening. It's what defines him as a character versus what defines Cassian Andor in this moment, where you see Andor fighting the Empire in these moments, killing stormtroopers, trying to get people to safety, all of this. That's the difference between these characters, which eventually these two have to cross paths, which we all know it is because the show is leading to it. And there's this incredible combat sequence. Cyril, again, this actor, he should be getting every call in Hollywood because he is phenomenal in this scene. It is such a great use of this actor, and specifically what the directors, what the writers do with this character. One of my favorite things is how big Cyril feels in this. He just takes up the screen in a way that I don't think he's ever done before in this show, where there's a scene where he's choking out Dedra after she's lied to him, and you just feel how big he is as a presence. And then, of course, when him and Cassian get into this fist fight, it's just a brutal fist fight. It's just truly two guys beating the shit out of each other. And what then is the big moment of this is when this character, Cyril, has the drop on Cassian and he's about to kill him. And Andor asks him, "Who are you?" It's such a perfect summary of Cyril's life. He dies a nobody. The person that he has been chasing for years, the inciting incident in Andor episode 1 from season 1. This guy has basically spent his whole life, or his whole imperial life, chasing this character of Andor, believing that this will make everything right. When he sees Andor, it almost triggers him to the belief of like, everything that's gone wrong in my life is due to this man and this man only. And then to have that man be like, I have no clue who you are. Who are you? It's just such a devastating moment for him. He is quite literally a cog in the Empire. Like, he doesn't have a role. He doesn't have a face. He is the bureaucracy to a genocide. And for him, that's the most tragic way to go out. He is a nobody. He is this symbol that the Empire can use, but the Empire doesn't care about him. Andor doesn't care about him. He is a nobody. He has nobody left. And it's just such a perplexing, challenging moment where you see this, where you have the bit of sympathy for Cyril in this moment, because you really do feel the devastation that this character is doing. And yet, you know, this is all deserved. He sees himself as the phrase, the good German, like this guy who's like, oh, I didn't realize the atrocities being committed. Like, had I known, maybe I wouldn't have done it. Like, it doesn't matter. You did it. You stood by. And it is just the difference between him and Andor. Andor is constantly asking why. He's constantly asking questions. He is constantly pushing back at Luthen. You barely see Cyril push back at anyone in this show. I think it's just such a wonderful character realization, and again, how these two characters are so interlinked and why their stories overlap the way they do, which then brings us to the end of episode 8. And it's the most haunting moment of this episode, which is the radio transmission, which is basically you have this woman who is calling out to the galaxy, letting them know what is happening. The Ghorman people are being massacred. Will anyone come out to help us? Please help us. We're being destroyed. It's here today. The fire, they set the fire. It's coming down. All of that, like this whole speech over the radio, it's one of the most upsetting things. I think there is an extra level of uncomfortability and pain in this because of what's going on in the world today, whether that's in Palestine, whether that's in Ukraine, whether that's any of the places where genocide is being committed. These messages, these stories feel real. So to hear this character saying that, it's something so devastating, and it brings us back to the real. It is impossible not to think of the real world while watching this moment and the pain, the suffering that these characters are facing at the hands of tyranny. And I think this is done expertly well, again, by the writing staff and the casting crew and everyone in this, which is the person giving the radio transmission is a woman with an accent. Like, again, it just kind of gives light and brings it back to the real, brings it back to the now. So much of this is happening. And I think that's also a big idea. This is happening all around us right now as we speak. People are being systematically killed by governments, and we're standing idly by. I think that's one of the challenging things of this moment, which is just like when confronted with it, when seeing what it looks like, it's terrifying. And it's also like, well, how can nobody take action? And yet every day, a lot of us don't take action, including myself. I think that's what this episode does so well and personifies this in its final moments, which then, of course, leads to episode 9, which is the last few points that I have of this. The death of truth is the ultimate victory of evil. This is a quote that Mon Mothma says. The actress who plays Mon Mothma just deserves every award because she gives the fire monologue in this episode. She is the key to understanding what Andor Season 2 is about, which is the birth of the Rebel Alliance. I basically heard Tony Gilroy do interviews about Andor Season 2, and he's like, I had two things that I really wanted to define: the Ghorman Massacre and Mon Mothma's speech that led to the beginning of the Rebel Alliance, basically Mon Mothma's exile from the Senate. And this scene does not disappoint, which is the focal point of episode 9, which is essentially Mon Mothma and Bail Organa basically realize this is the time, and Mon Mothma realizes she has to be the one who delivers this speech. And she delivers this speech to the Senate, which basically ends her regime within the Senate and has to make her go on the move. And it's, again, this line that we have, the death of truth is the ultimate victory of evil. It's all, again, tied to propaganda. It's all tied to the lies. It's all tied to the complacency and knowing what is happening and doing nothing about it. And it then is defined so brilliant with my next point, which is what happened on Ghorman was unprovoked genocide incited by Emperor Palpatine. That's not a direct quote, but that is what she says. And unprovoked genocide is a direct quote given by Mon Mothma, which she then repeats, a genocide. It's one of the most startling, one of the most powerful moments I've seen in a TV show recently. A lot of TV shows avoid this word. They never want to say the word genocide. And it's kind of like calling a spade a spade. And it's a moment that's extremely important. You have to call genocide a genocide, which is something that I think we are all kind of grappling with right now. In the context of Palestine, the fact that the Israeli government is leading to the genocide of the Palestinians, like that is something that is happening. And again, you got to call it what it is. You got to call it the systematic murder of a people. And specifically in this case, it is for the natural resources. So to hear Mon Mothma say it, this is the point of episode 9. Like this is the whole thing that Andor leads to. The horrors that happen to the people of oh my gosh, what's this? The Ghorman people, like the horrors that happen, and calling it what it is. And to call it what it is and place blame, like she places the blame on Emperor Palpatine directly. And I think it's just such a powerful moment. It speaks truth to power. And I think it's just something that a lot of people are seeking, or a lot of people are asking for from their government. And to see it delivered in this moment, and also realizes the consequences of it. The choice, the deliberation to use the word genocide is the key to this speech. And it's such a powerful, rousing moment delivered by Mon Mothma. That is the leader that you want. And it's also her becoming wise to what is actually going on. When we meet her in season 1, she's this person that seemingly still has a faith in the institution. And by the time she exiles the Senate, she has no faith in the institution. She realizes the fight is happening and she needs to be a part of it. And she needs to say her piece. She needs to say and call out what is happening and tell other people, communicate that to the larger world. Like what you're seeing is what's happening, and you need to understand that, and we can't stand for this. It's such a powerfully delivered monologue by Mon Mothma, which then, of course, leads to the escape. This is my second to last point, which is the escape, Mon Mothma basically having to flee, the welcome to the rebellion moment for her, which is her coming to terms with what is happening. Now, Mon Mothma has been this character that is seemingly aware of a lot of the stuff going on, in the fact that she knows some of the stuff Luthen is doing in the shadows. But again, that's what it is. It's all in the shadows. She doesn't have blood on her hands. She doesn't have to feel that. She doesn't have to see anyone murdered until this episode where she sees 2 people shot down in cold blood by Cassian Andor. And again, it is the means of escape, and it is the means of a war. You have to do this. Cassian has to. He cannot trust anybody. What I found so exhilarating about this scene is the limo driver of Exmar Chloris, I believe is how you pronounce his name. And the reason this works so well is because Exmar is, as we learn, to be the spy for the Empire. And he's listening to Mon Mothma's speech. And I don't know if anyone else had this moment. I certainly had this moment listening to him talk, which is Exmar, I think, is getting a little roused by the speech. Like you see him maybe coming to his own. Like he's like, maybe she's making a few good points. And for me, this moment, I thought he was actually going to go and possibly be the escape for Mon Mothma. Like he was going to help Cassian and Mon Mothma escape. It kind of feels like it's leading to this heroic moment. I don't know, maybe this was me just misreading this moment. However, then what I love about this is Cassian doesn't allow him that. If he is going to make a hero turn, if it's left vague, Cassian takes that away from him. He dies who he dies. That's his legacy. At that moment, he dies. There's no redemption for him. There's nothing else left for him. He is killed in cold blood because that's a war. He has to be killed because Cassian cannot trust anybody. Cassian realizes the stakes of it, and Mon Mothma comes to realize the stakes of it in this moment. If she gets captured, the rebellion is over. And she realizes Cassian and Luthen and Saw Gerrera and all these characters that maybe she found unsavory, they have a point. This needs to happen. She is more important. The one is more important than the others that die from it. That is the casualties of war. That is what war is. there are people who have more power, and the power that they can influence can be more costly. And again, it is the cost of war. It is the balance. It is the decisions. It is the murder of people to ensure that one person stays safe. This is the moral conundrums that Andor does so well as a TV show that I think echo through our history again, and our understanding of what war is and what good and evil looks like in war. It's not black and white. We want to believe it is, but we know it's somewhere in between. And that's what Mon Mothma learns in this moment as she leads herself into the rebellion. And which finally breaks us to the final moment of this episode that I want to talk about. It's the big moment. It is Bix basically realizing she needs to remove herself from this equation. Basically, Bix, the girlfriend of Andor, realizes, hey, if I stay here on Yavin 4, Andor will always have an excuse to come home and want to come home, and he won't take the risk he needs to as a leader because he wants to come home to me. And I love him, and I also know he's destined for great things within the rebellion. So at this choice, she basically makes the choice. I need to leave Andor now so he can be the leader that he needs to be and that the world/galaxy needs him to be. And it's this idea that touches back to my first one, or for Andor, where it's destiny, it's choice, or is it forced upon him? This is a thing that he doesn't get to decide. He doesn't have a choice in this. You could call it his destiny, you could call it the Force, you could call it this is something forced upon him. All we know is Cassian is left alone. He has no one now. Bix is gone. It's such a devastating moment for him when he just realizes she's gone. And we also kind of have a feeling we know what's going to happen. Maybe she reappears next week and Cassian and her get their reunion. Most likely that's the last moment he ever saw Bix. I think that's where the show's leading to. And again, it's just this moment where Cassian, to be the leader, to do what he ends up doing in Rogue One, is sacrifice. And it's the sacrifices that others make for him. He's not necessarily choosing to make these sacrifices, but he's the only person capable of being put on this. It's such a powerful, I think, realization of destiny in our lives. I think that is something that everyone kind of conscientiously thinks about. Not only is what is our choice, what is just hoist upon us, and how do we rise to those occasions? In this moment, this makes Cassian Andor the leader of the rebellion. He is one of the leading forces. For better or for worse, he has been through it all. He has seen it all. He has seen the atrocities of the Empire, and he still chooses to fight. And in this moment, he now has the freedom to fight and do what must be done because he now has nothing left to come home to. That's a heartbreaking realization, and it's just so masterfully written within it. I love Andor. You can clearly tell by my review, but I'm just obsessed with this show, as I hope many of you are. And I thank you for everyone who watched. Let me know what you guys thought about episodes 7 through 9. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure to subscribe to this channel for more. I'll be back for a few reviews, and next week I will be doing a series finale review for Andor for sure. So thank you so much for watching. Take care.